Well, good Sunday morning. Signed, sealed, and delivered in a defining election, a decisive vote. The vote, a reflection of no confidence more than the plans on paper. And in a special edition of Beyond the Headlines, we're live in the studio to talk over the results of the city's bond election. In a bitterly contested election, fought in person, in comment sections, and in this very room, it ends not with a whimper, but with an exclamation point. Across the four propositions, an average of 5 no votes for every 1 yes. Every single proposition defeated by overwhelming opposition. The closest margin, Proposition D, even then a 60 percentage point landslide. Those results disappointing for city leaders. In the wake of Saturday night's vote, the city released a statement thanking voters for participating and reaffirming a commitment to meeting community needs. But the city's saying in part that they'll explore alternative paths to move forward with the projects originally proposed in the bond. In the statement, they highlighted a focus on transparency, fiscal responsibility, and meaningful community engagement as they chart the next steps. And there was some early reaction from council members. District 6's Dr. Tyler King had this to say, calling the election not a loss, but a victory for democracy. Also saying the city must reflect and earn back trust from Laredoans. Well, Saturday night was for results. Sunday morning is about what comes next. Joining us this morning is a familiar face, Chairman of the Bond Referendum Committee, Hector Alaniz. Also on our panel this morning, Fernando Baldazo, who helped lead the campaign against the bond, and KGNS General Manager Luis Villarreal. Good morning, gentlemen. Appreciate having you all join us on a Sunday morning live for our, post-election results show. We appreciate having you with us. So, Fernando, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Well, first of all, how do we get to the bond? Trying to fund a rec center or something by Dr. King. And that's how it started rolling. And the intentions of the bond committee were good. We want to fund what we need more than what we want, right? But talking to people after the bond was set, people just didn't trust our government, and much less with that amount of money, and then no plan, just saying, we need this blank check for this, $10 million to fix Hamilton apartments. And just everybody that I talked to is like, I don't trust them. They gave themselves a 65% raise, while they give the regular employee only a 2% raise. And they just gave it to themselves, without consulting anybody. And that just didn't sit well with citizens who were already paying really high taxes. And I think it was bad timing because most people, like everybody, they just got their new property tax bill. And they're like, would you like to increase it by another 20%? Of course, everybody's going to say no, regardless what the money is for. And as I've been saying, Laredo has a huge budget. I mean, we just have a spending problem. We don't have a money problem. We have a spending problem.
Very, very insightful there. Hector, where do we go from here as one of the committee
here's my
members?
thoughts. Very limited time. I think we've only got 12 minutes. So I would, ask Mr. Baldazo, because I've heard a lot of his arguments, right? And so I would ask him, let's debate that. Let's talk about, what happened on a longer scale. We can go to one of the pods that you've been on before, and we can talk a little bit more about that. My thoughts on this is, I'm surprised at the big, voting, variance. More than 80% voted no. So my question is, there's 4 reasons that, bond referendum fail. Lack of transparency. People don't understand how bond, works, and how they're going to be repaid, how the funds are going to be, used. Mistrust in leadership. And, on that question, I'd love to hear from you. I mean, do you really trust all city council and management, or are we talking about history? And that's something we can talk about later. But I mean, I would like to, find out, that information, because I know you served in the bond committee as well. And not only did you not believe in one single one, but you asked people to vote against all of them. So I'd like a little bit more information about that. Now, economic concerns. Look, there were several other cities that passed, big bond referendums, this same election period. Arlington, you like to compare Arlington to us. Arlington passed a $200 million bond referendum just yesterday. Corpus Christi passed $175 million in December of 2024. Bonds work. I think, my thought is maybe, our community just doesn't understand them. They don't get, well informed, and it becomes an issue. The other one is the perception of need. I think all of us have discussed this. We all understand this was not a wish list. This is a needs list. It's a needs list, but we're not willing to pay property taxes for the needs that we have in the community. So I will be gladly to talk about those things.
So I think, and from the outside, obviously, I was not part of the bond committee or anything, and all I can do is sit back and Monday morning quarterback this thing for a long time. But I think I agree 100%. We have former council members, former city employees, and all of them talking about how bad this is and how bad the administration is, and it's like, what have you done about it?
True.
You've been there. You've been part of the problem. Why have you not fixed it? So I'm not disagreeing that there aren't problems, but you start hearing from people that have been there or
Right.
that have created some of these issues, and now all of a sudden they're washing their hands from any wrongdoing, and I don't think that's correct.
I totally agree with you.
So, and then on the other side is, listen, the problem is that I don't know about the wants and needs. I think even within the needs, there are still some wants.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day is that we have never seen the city or the county or the state, for that matter, resemble anything like, okay, let's tighten our belts here to do something. Never. So when we talk about giving the city and the administration the leeway and say, you know what, okay, obviously we cannot sit here and blame everything on the past, because at some point somebody's going to have to do something about
That's
it,
true.
right?
Yes.
But I think it needs to start from them. I think the city needs to show, hey, listen, we're going to tighten our belts. We're going to do this cut across the board. We're going to do reduction of labor. We're going to do a spending, I don't know, something that shows us.
Yeah.
I agree.
I still think that the biggest reason why this failed was that statement from the city about how, well, if it doesn't pass, we're going
Right.
to look for alternatives.
And why not do it now?
Why
I
didn't
think
they
that
do
was.
Maybe talk
They
about
should
that.
have
Yeah.
looked
I
for
think talk
alternatives
about that.
first.
I think that was if anybody was going to say, what did we do wrong? I think that played a huge part, because who in their right mind says, well, give me some money, but if you don't give me some money, I'm going to try and look for some savings, because at the end of the
I
day,
agree.
that's what
Yeah.
it is.
Mindy talked about that, at the last session. That why start talking about, okay, if it doesn't work, this is we're going to have to look to see where else we can fund. Here's a couple of things that I know, and Fernando, I'm going to work with you. I believe in accountability and fiscal responsibility. Okay, so I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to check with the city leaders, to find out, okay, where do we go from here? What are going to be the plans, right? But I want to know where that pot of gold is. You keep talking about that the money's already there in the annual budgets. I want to know where that pot of gold is, where can we already find money in that budget that we can fund the
Well,
projects that we
they need to cut expenses. For example, how much do we spend maintaining Plaza Theater a year? Do you know?
No.
It's almost $1 million.
Okay.
For green lights.
All right.
How much money do we spend nonprofits that are supposed to bring business to downtown? And we're actually losing businesses
so
downtown.
How many millions of dollars are we talking about? Like 10, 15, 20?
I mean, if you start looking, we can find at least 50 million.
I'm not going to jump in. He can defend himself all he wants, so I'm not going to defend him. But okay, let's just say it's $20 million.
Right.
And I think what you're going is, okay, that's 20. We need 417.
Right.
Okay, but let's save those 20 first. Right?
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Let's show people we're
Let's show
saving this
people
money.
what
I
we're
agree.
doing. I don't think we're going to find $417 million
No,
out there.
actually, yes.
You can't find them?
From last year to this year, our budget increased 160 million. And we have the same expenses.
Okay, and
What are we
let's-
doing with those 160
and
million?
let's
Let's
talk a
find
little
it. I
bit
wanna see
about,
that.
in just about a month or so, we're going to get how much more money that the appraisal values are going to generate.
Yes.
That, we're going to compare what they're going to be told by the appraisal district, what their anticipated amount of money is, and we can compare it to what they got last year, and we can see that big, it's going to jump. I mean, it's not going down, it's going to
Right.
jump, and we all know it's going to
At
jump
least
because of the
10%.
appraisal, absolutely. that money, together with rollback money, together with anything that they can tighten their belts with. Let's say they found $20 million.
Right.
Well, $10 million is right
It
there
could
for the
fund one of the
Hamilton
smaller
Hotel.
projects. Exactly.
Yeah,
It'll take care of the
You're right.
Hamilton issue.
exactly,
That's right, yeah.
right there.
That's true.
So, and just, take them off and be able to do it. The streets should be able to be done
My
with
concern
revenue
with the
right
streets
now.
and some of these projects is now that the bond referendums failed, right? The City of Laredo can't even use certificate of obligation funds, to be able to, take care of some of the projects that we need. So they're not going to be able to go borrow money on that for 3 years, okay? And that's the issue with bond referendums. Bond referendums work. If they didn't work, you wouldn't have a 78% success rate and approval rate across the state of Texas alone.
But it's not
They
the
do work.
bond rating, Hector. It's not the bond rating. It's the leadership. It's the lack of trust. It's the fact
But
that
is it
they give
now, or
themselves
is it-
raises. They give themselves pensions. It's the perception of them first and then everybody else. That really
on
hurts.
that note, not everybody wanted that raise, okay?
Well, they all
part
got
of
it.
them did.
Well,
They are
yeah,
going to
no,
get
but
it.
you're
not
right.
part of
There
the
were
solution, you're
people,
part of
there
the
were
problem.
council
We're
members
talking
who
about
voted
the
Talking
against
solution,
it.
about
part of the problem. They could stop it.
$180,000 only compared to the infrastructures of the
But it's
community's
the
needs.
perception of the lack of trust.
Let me jump in for a second, Fernando. I have a sign outside my office that says, if you're coming to me with a problem, at least bring me one idea as to how to solve it.
Yeah, that's
So,
a good point.
I posed that to you and to the people who were adamantly opposed to this thing. Okay, so what do we do? Okay, so we can save some money. We still are in fierce competition for our livelihood with other markets, other municipalities. We need the infrastructure to maintain our #1 industry, all of those things. What do we do?
Okay, first of all, like, as we said, we saved 20 million. Let's Hamilton, fix that problem first, okay? Second, let's build another project in 2 years. Now the police department, okay? Let's work on all those 4 things that we need every 2-3 years. We don't need to have them all funded on the same year. And we
They
get
were
the
not
money.
gonna be they were not going to be funded. All
Yeah.
we were going to ask is to be able to fund them in the get-go. So-
I have a good idea, okay? So, not only some of the things that we've talked about, trying to find, where is the rest of the money, and look at the annual budget. If there's some things that need to be trimmed down and dedicated for something else, let's do that. But my idea is this bond referendum didn't include the public enhancement projects with the rec centers. Why not, have another bond referendum next year on this and see how it does? Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to come back. When we come back, we've got a lot more to discuss. The Chamber of Commerce joins us to weigh in on what comes next. Don't go anywhere. We're back in 2 minutes.
There you go. Okay, we're...
Well, while the Chamber of Commerce backed the bond, that support came with conditions. As the voice of the business community, they previously said the bond had the potential to improve the city, but on the issue of trust, it was still an open question.
We just want to emphasize that the Chamber urges the city to take concrete steps to rebuild trust in the community, not just with the business community, but also the residents.
When you mean rebuild trust, I mean, when was trust lost in the sense?
I think it's been over the course of many years. This isn't something that happens overnight. I think that is why our community feels the way they do. But in order for us to grow, then this has to be a mutual effort and they need to be held accountable. We want to yield results and we want to measure those results.
Well, joining us for this part of the show is Laredo Chamber of Commerce Chairwoman Sandra Alaniz. Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning,
Thank you so
Nadine.
much for
Good
joining
morning,
us.
Luis. How y'all doing?
We're doing really well. We just heard from Monica there on how the Chamber was feeling about this bond. So representing the business community, where do we go from here?
That's exactly what I was thinking yesterday. It stands the fact that we still need some of these things to happen, right? So obviously, in any good business, when something doesn't work, what do you have to do? You go back and reevaluate what went right, what went wrong, and how can you fix it? So at this point, I think the city has to go back and say, well, what are the issues? What are the main issues and why didn't it pass? And how do we move forward? Now, that's going to be very complicated for them.
Yeah,
I was going to ask, I mean, and obviously being part of the chamber and having gone through all of these roller coasters, I mean, the business community, when we talk about trust and we talk about transparency and things like that, unfortunately, The business community has not always been in lockstep with the city administration. And when we were talking earlier about, well, is it an chicken and egg thing? I mean, do we just trust that everything that is going to happen is going to happen? What does the business community need to see?
Well, as Monica said in her clip, we need transparency, we need plans, we need to see where the money is going. And yes, they did give us that. But however, I think really what needs to be done first is go back to why did we wait so many years to do this? I mean, the last bond was passed in the 90s. That's 30 years ago. These things just didn't happen right now.
Right.
So as any good business, you have to run a city like a business. When you own a business, you plan for things and you make expenditures as they come up. You can't wait 30 years later to address these issues. So that is the biggest problem, I think. Now we're kind of having to retroactively go back and fix things that really should have been done from years ago.
But the fact remains that we're going to have to fix them.
Right,
anyway,
correct.
Right,
Yeah.
and so the only issue, and I struggle with this a lot because we're very critical of city government or government in general, and we all business people, we all look at it and say, well, as a business, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Well, a lot of the services that the city is supposed to provide for us do not generate revenue, are not sound businesses because they're not supposed to be. I mean, how do you justify a new firehouse, or how do you justify more police? Well, you don't really get to justify it until you're the one that needs it, right? And so,
and that's what I was just going to say. I was talking to Mindy the other day, and I told her I had an accident. Instead of calling 911, because I was by myself, I drove myself to the hospital.
Right.
So to me, that's very important. I couldn't wait 20 minutes to get to the hospital while I was, head injury, bleeding. But when it happens to you, when it happens to your family, you see that there's a huge need for that. So as a Chamber of Commerce, we're constantly advocating not only for our business community, but for our community in general.
not to mention because we also, that goes to our quality of life, which
Right.
turns into how do we recruit more businesses to come in?
Absolutely.
How do we grow?
But on that note too, talking about quality of life, there were, lots of people were very critical of this bond because there weren't
Any of those
fun
items.
quality, and I put that in air quotes, quality of life issues. And that's very important to businesses wanting to come down too, they
Not
they
only
want.
Mindy, it's not only important for business, but this is what worries me. When I started transitioning to being chair, my biggest worry was the future of Laredo. 40 years ago, my father was very involved with the Chamber of Commerce, as you all know, in the 80s and 90s. Some of the issues that they're having then, we're still having now.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue that we have in Laredo for, the community is our brain drain.
Exactly.
So to me, 40 years ago, if kids didn't want to stay in Laredo then, why are they going to want to stay now? So it goes back to, the quality of life, 1, 2, how do we get these young people to buy and staying in Laredo? Yeah. And we've got great university, we have a great college, we can educate them, but how do we get them to stay? And how do we get them to trust the city officials?
Yeah, and want to raise their kids there. I'm so worried I'm going to lose my boys because why would they want to stay here?
Precisely. So this is not a topic, or this is not an issue that just started. It's been happening for years. So what is the answer to that? I wish I had the answer to that. But what I do know is that you take baby steps. And everything, you have to have a plan, and you have to have your plan A, your plan B, and then you execute. And then you continue doing that. That's just business, right? So I think that what needs to be done is perhaps the city needs to see itself more of a business rather than a governmental agency.
Agreed.
And going back to the business aspect of it, they need to cut corners. I know that when
But
times
not
are
cut
tough.
corners,
Not-
cut expenses.
Cut expenses.
Yes.
That's what I meant. Yes, because that's what you have to do here at
Absolutely.
KGNS
Right.
whenever times are tough. That's the first thing you do.
We tighten our purse
We
strings.
tighten our belts, exactly. And that is not what they did. And they blatant told us that that's not what they did. So we have it on the record. So now, as a business, like you said, Sandra, they need to start looking at that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the Chamber of Commerce enjoys a very healthy relationship with both the city and the county. We're very grateful to that. So now we can collaborate together.
I think actually, to that point, Sandra, I think it's important that people understand that that's not always been the case.
No.
I think over the last few years, the chamber and the business community in general has enjoyed a better relationship, because to the credit of some of the administration,
The leaders
and
here
some
in
of
the
the
chamber.
leaders, and some of the leaders of the city and the county too, there has been a more of a, okay, let's see what the problems are and let's see if we can try to fix it. Unfortunately, I don't think it has moved fast enough. I don't think, I still think we still have issues where the city and the county could be more pro-business than they are right now. I think less bureaucracy and more efficient means
Right.
of supporting the business community would go a long way.
Right.
But that all goes to what you guys are asking at the chamber, is like, okay, show us what you are doing.
We wanted
so that we can
transparency.
support it. Do you expect any retaliation in any way, shape, or form for the chamber or for the Laredo Economic Development Foundation or anything like that from the city for not being openly and
Yeah.
supportive?
Well, we know about the letter that was sent
Right.
to the Laredo Economic Development Council.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. If we can quickly review how we came to this conclusion and support with, contingencies. We have a governmental affairs committee that actually, as you know, advises us what to do. So it goes through a process. It's just not one person making
Agreed.
this decision. So that's a lot of misinformation out there. Even I can't carte blanche say, we're going to pass this up and we're going to approve that. No, it goes through the committee, it goes to the board, it goes to the executive committee for passing, and then we all vote and we agree upon what we're going to do. Retaliation, I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I don't know how.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
what
no,
the, what,
because again, we need each other.
Yeah.
And if we want to make Laredo great, we have to have each other on the same plan of action, and we have to work together, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah, well, that is a good plan, and hopefully folks are listening, and that's how everyone moves forward. Thank you so much, Sandra.
Thank you.
Well, when we come back, we're going to take a look back at the week and the one thing that our panelists cannot stop thinking about. Stay with us. Welcome back, everybody. Well, it was a pretty busy week this past week, so you can imagine there was a lot of things that we can talk about as our parting segment. But Luis, what's your one thing?
well, my one thing is that we rarely get to do this on the day of, but I am so tickled that today is actually May the 4th.
It is. We're such Star Wars
and so
people here.
I think it makes a lot of sense. So this is my message to the city and the Bond Election Committee and all those people. It's like, May the 4th be with you. And let's see where we go from here. I think there's a lot of encouraging things happening, but yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of lessons that and takeaways rather that can be taken away from what happened and just to do things a little bit different.
City Council at its highest.
Well, we all like Star Wars, so it's appropriate for being May the 4th today. Well, my one thing is I'm so tickled and that is Ariel Gomez. He's the producer Beyond the Headlines. So Ariel and I were at the Stars Extravaganza, Stars Scholarship Fund Extravaganza that took place this past week. And former U.S. Attorney General William Barr was the keynote speaker. And we had an opportunity to meet him and chat with him. And, we see these people on the news all the time, on the national news. We report on things that are done. But when you actually meet them in person, they're so different. He was such a nice gentleman. And he even promised us an interview sometime in the future. So I do want to shout out to the Star Scholarship Fund and the La Mantillas for putting together such an incredible scholarship opportunity for kids. And it's for high school kids, college kids, and even those who want to go to graduate school. So look up Star Scholarship Fund. They were able to raise $190,000, I believe, this past week. All the money raised does go to scholarship, it stays here. They don't even pay for administrative costs through the funds that are raised because those costs are absorbed by L&F distributors. So kudos to the Star Scholarship Fund. You guys are doing an amazing job. So I think that is it. We just want to remind everybody that check our Facebook page, our Instagram, social media. There are so many viewers' comments talking about the bond. There were so many good ones, as a matter of fact. This one talking about how, it was just basically a vote of no confidence in our city government more than a rejection. This other comment right here says one such benefit would have been greater access to mental health care. talking about maybe items that should have been placed in the bond. So that's important. And then there were comments that say that they're already looking ahead to November, saying it's time for a different kind of election. One viewer pitched ideas like reducing council pay, eliminating discretionary funds, and putting more power back in the hands of voters. So lots of opinions out there, Luis.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it again soon.
Let's do it again. That's all the time we have, but we'll see you right back here for another issue of Beyond the Headlines next Sunday. May the 4th be with you.